Welcome back, adventurer, to Becoming the Hero. I'm here again with Adam Gunton, and picking up where we left off last time. Adam, if you went back to your high school years or when your addiction really started, what would you have done to prevent yourself from becoming addicted?
If I was a parent, it would be different than if I was me back then. If I was a parent or a adult or someone that is looking after a youth, if you start noticing things, you sit them down and you have the conversation. And if they fight you about it or anything like that, you continue to have the conversation out of love. And the thing about it is that there is a overwhelmingly high percentage of teens that admit to experimenting with alcohol and other drugs. Teens. The average age right now for first consumption of alcohol is 11 or 12 years old. And marijuana they're saying is 14. So I started around 12, 13 with everything, with marijuana, cocaine, and alcohol. I went off with a bang. But the thing is that some people are able to experiment and then make it out without becoming addicted. But anyone that would have talked to me and gotten the truth out of me could have seen that I was going down a very dangerous path. A very dangerous path. I don't remember anything except for the DARE program coming in when I was in 4th grade. And the DARE program didn't work. The DARE program actually basically told me about drugs and alcohol for the first time. And I remember wearing the drunk goggles and like almost falling and the whole class laughing. And I was like, oh, well, if I get drunk, I'm going to make everybody laugh, you know? And it's interesting that we're talking about this right now because the vision of Recovered on Purpose in the future, when all of these addicts in recovery are sharing their stories powerfully to help addicts suffering, they're going to build this certain kind of confidence in telling their story like that. And then there's a totally different kind of rhetoric, a totally different kind of speech that has to happen to kids and schools. And when we have 10, 15, 20,000 addicts in recovery that are confidently sharing their stories, then boom, we come out with a new program that smashes the DARE program. We let kids know that they maybe they do experiment, but if they notice one of their friends who was experimenting starting to go down that path, here's the signs, here's the warnings, here's what I went through, and here's where I ended up. You know, this is the time to help them. Giving power to kids is actually the best thing we can do because kids already think they have all the power. They already think that you can't tell me what to do and you can't do this and you can't do that. You know, if you go in and tell a kid when he's 10, 11 years old not to drink or use drugs, he's like, ooh, when can I find some drinking and drugs? You know, that's just how young boys are. But if we go in as peers, as people that have been right where they are, with a story that took us to a certain point, and we don't glorify it, because there's a lot of speakers that mistakenly talk to kids, and, you know, like me, if I was to go in and show the video of me overdosing and then I go into this whole recovery story about how great recovery is and how I published a book and now I'm, you know, doing all this speaking and all this stuff, and they're like, oh, well, I can make it through drug addiction too. But the point is that we stop them from going through any of that. So there's a whole new program that's going to come out in the next 5 to 10 years that is going to halt a lot of early stage addiction starting.
I'm fascinated with the fact that you said, the first thing that you do is have a conversation with them. And I think that's really interesting. What particularly drew you to that first step?
Kids are smart, man. Kids are super smart. And kids don't want to be told what to do. And if they're using drugs and alcohol, they for sure do not want to be told not to use drugs and alcohol from an authority figure. If you have a conversation with your kids, with the kids in your life about these kinds of things, and, you know, I've met a lot of parents that do it perfectly. that open up the conversation from a place of understanding and love, and a place of, if you're ever in trouble, you can always come to me, because I'm never going to be the parent that spanks you over this. I'm never going to be the parent that grounds you over this. I need you just to be honest with me always, so I can always be there for you.
If I can just emphasize that, I've heard stories of, people, I guess, confiding in their parents about something they've done that has been questionable, along the lines of drugs, pornography, alcohol, one of these things. And the parent kind of went off the rails and just yelled at them, was not, and just kind of putting it in perspective, how would you react to someone who acted like that to you? You would probably never talk to them again. I know I wouldn't.
How could
Uh,
you?
yet, exactly right. And actually, on that note, you also said, if someone could have gotten the truth out of you when you were younger, uh, what sort of things would have been necessary, or necessary? What sort of things would have helped you, I guess, release the truth?
Releasing the truth back then would have just taken a conversation. I don't remember ever really being asked until it was too late. I don't remember ever really having a conversation about it until it was too late. I don't remember ever having a conversation in high school with anybody. You know, um, I don't think that, I think at the very end of my senior year, when it started getting bad and I started getting in a little trouble, I was talked to by authority figures about the trouble I'm going to get in. So I had to, I had to be sneakier, you know, in order to graduate. But it wasn't a conversation of like, hey, I love you. You've done this and this and this with your life. We've watched you do incredible things, and I just want to know what's going on right now. This stays between you and I no matter what. It will not go to your parents unless you expressly tell me it's okay. And if it's a parent talking to me, it's a difficult conversation to have, but it's necessary, and it's different for every relationship between son and father, or son and mother. Uh, you have to be prepared to take on their emotions, take on the kids' emotions that they come at you with when you bring up the conversation. You can't let your voice raise. You can't let any of that happen. And when they see that, you're really there because you care and you're a safe place for all of their emotions, then they're much more apt to talk to you, be honest with you.
Speaking as someone who is a prospective future parent, um, how would you, I guess, from start to finish, how would you broach the drugs, alcohol, addiction topic, and how would you help your kids prepare to face the inevitability that they will be offered these objects?
At a very young age, there would be a conversation about it. Me personally, my kids will always know my story. I'm very, very
Mm.
vocal about my story, and being in recovery, they'll always know. But if I wasn't really someone in recovery and I wanted to learn how to talk to my kids, I would start as early as possible. If your kids are already over 10, 11, 12 years old, I would sit them down as soon as you finish this podcast and just talk to them about, drugs. And you sit down and you say, hey, I want to have a conversation with you. And it's because I love you. And I know that you are a strong, independent, smart, individual person. And I want to talk to you about some things going on in the world right now that I need you to know about. And you can do some research on different drugs and find out what they do to, someone's life. There's pictures of what happens when you do meth that do a whole timeline. There's plenty of videos. You can watch my video of when the police found me dead from an overdose of fentanyl. You can look up all kinds of different things like this and have the conversation with them and ask them. The cool thing is you can present things to a kid and then ask them what they think. And that's always the most powerful way to influence someone, is get them to find the answer themselves. So asking them, have you been offered anything yet? Marijuana or alcohol or anything? And then if they come to you with truth and they've already tried something, just ask them what they thought of it. Ask them how it was. Don't judge. Don't reprimand. Don't, spank them or any of that stuff. Because chances are, if you have a 14-year-old or older, they have. So be prepared for that before going into the conversation. And if they're younger, talk to them about it. What would you do if someone offered you this? You don't tell them, if someone offers you drugs, just say no, because that's telling them what to do. They didn't come up with that answer, and a lot of times they're going to go against that answer because they were told what to do. So, however your relationship is with your child, offer up questions for them to come to conclusions for themselves.
Wow, I really like that. And again, I'm just thinking back to my personal upbringing, and a lot of things my parents did really well. And I actually do remember certain conversations where they're like, they kind of walked us through some stuff. And your point about researching, I think, is a really good point, and that's probably something that hopefully our adventurers will put into practice. But kind of switching perspectives a little bit, let's say you yourself have managed to get to a point in life, let's say your 20s, where you are addiction free. You have not delved into it, but it's more so because you haven't really been offered an opportunity. What sort of things would you do for yourself to make sure that you never find yourself slipping down into addiction?
In your 20s, if you're 25, 26, 27 or older and you haven't tried drugs, you really don't need to. I'm telling you right now, you don't need to. And I'm not really a proponent for drug use in any fashion. However, I believe that there are certain drugs that some people can experiment with that will not take them down a road of addiction. If you haven't tried cocaine, amphetamines, or opiates, don't ever try them. There is absolutely no reason for that in your life. There's nothing they can add to your life. There's nothing they can add to your personality, your character. There is no value in ever trying those drugs. Anything else that you decide as an adult with your life together that you want to try for yourself, that's up to you. Get some advice from some good friends, that only do those types of things, and see if it'll take you on some kind of, exploratory journey. I don't know. Don't ever try cocaine, opiates, or amphetamines. If you're considering anything and you're going to do it, make sure you do it in a safe place with safe people. And the reason why I'm having this conversation with you in that fashion is I have to be authentic. And there's people out there that have very good relationships with certain drugs. I have friends that have had very good relationships with certain kinds of drugs. And I'm an addict. I'm someone that if I do mushrooms, I very likely within a couple hours will be shooting up heroin. That's just how it happens for me. But if you have a life you want to live with friends that know what they're doing, do it. Don't ever try cocaine or crack, opiates or amphetamines. The reason why I say 25 or 27 years old is even early 20s can still be a very influential time on your mind and your view of the world. So if you try certain things at even 19, 20, 21 years old, if you haven't yet, it can very easily alter the entire path of your life, you know? And by the time you're 25, 26, 27, you're like, well, I decided I want to try crack. Why not?
Yeah. Um, and kind of speaking about that self awareness, what sort of things would you recommend the adventurer uh, do in order to pursue a little bit more of that self awareness and really get a feel for what they can or can't handle?
Journal it. I love journaling to get thoughts out and get awareness out. So a good prompt for journaling when you're thinking of a decision like this is write down what your thoughts are about it. Literally put a date at the top of a page and write down, I'm I'm considering right now trying this. The reason why I want to try it is this, and this. I heard about it from here, and this is what I hope to get out of it, and that kind of stuff. And then go into it's like a pros and cons thing, and then go into the reasons why you wouldn't want to, and really get out all of your thoughts onto paper so that you can collect them and make your decision from there. And this is actually, this doesn't, we can talk about this about anything in life. This doesn't have to be about
Hmm.
drugs and alcohol. Something I practice is in the morning I do a journal prompt where I write down the thoughts that I'm having, how I feel, the thoughts that I'm having. This is like right early in the morning. And then I write down 3 things I'm grateful for, and then 3 amazing things that could happen today. And then at night, I do an inventory. I basically write, my thoughts, some things that happened that day, if anything stuck out that I really want to keep track of. And then I write down 3 amazing things that did happen today, because a lot of times they don't match, and the amazing things that did happen are greater than the things that I wanted to happen. And then
Hmm.
I give myself a grade for the day on, 4 pillars. If it's health, productivity, connections and family, and business.
I love it. Um, every video game, every tabletop RPG has stats. And Adam, you essentially described, you have created your own stats, and am I doing things that are increasing my stats essentially? And you're chronicling your own hero's journey, which I love, and I think that's a really useful thing that people should do, because you can also go back and look historically and say, well, I think I have been improving. There seems to be somewhat of an upward trend. Um, Now, looking at the clock, I am cognizant that I think we've reached the end of our time, maybe gone a little bit over. So sorry about that. I want to be respectful for your time. Um, okay, we're good. Awesome.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask.
I do
You
want to
said,
touch on something you
yeah,
just said also, if that's cool.
sure. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So it's funny you say that, because when you talk to high level people, or if you notice this with high level speakers or people like that, they talk about life and they actually use the term game. And you'll hear it all the time. That's not the game I'm playing. Gary Vee says it. I don't sit and watch YouTube videos because that's not the game I'm playing.
Hmm.
And if you look at life as a game, as something that, you have to beat this master, you have to beat this problem, you have to,
Hmm.
learn this in order to get this pack on your back to do this. You have to learn about real estate in order to do this with your life, and you build this over here. You you can level up over and over and over and over.
Agreed. I love putting that in terms of the game of life, and really thinking about addiction. Oh, it's not. It's a hindrance, on the stats that you have. I can just imagine someone putting it in some video game or something as like a challenge that you have to overcome, and not something that you would seek out. Um, when you talked about the average age of drinking and drug use, you said it was 12 to 13. Just a big curiosity. Why do you think that age particularly?
The prepubescent or pubescent years are when we start to realize, like for real, that we are our own person. And the influence that happens at a middle school and a high school are, those the mixture of kids that could be being influenced by, you know, older brothers and older sisters and older cousins and all of these people, it gets passed down. And that's when that's a shift between when we are influenced by our parents and listen to our parents to being influenced by our environment and our peers. So a lot of people call it peer pressure and things like that. Um, but at that age is when we start to be more, you know, malleable by our environment. And our environment used to be spending a whole lot of time at home with our parents, listening to what they said, listening to, everything they told us to do, or else, clean your room or you're going to be grounded and that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden we're spending more than half of our day with all these other people. And that's why it's so important that parents continue the conversation with a level of trust on your part where the kid trusts you to be able to come to you with anything. And I know parents that have that relationship with their kids where their kids have told them, the craziest things and they received them with love. And the great thing is that you get to actually help them in the heart, oftentimes the hardest point of their life. To that point, you get to show up as a loving, caring parent. And if they get that at 12, 13, 14 years old, when they come to you with the worst thing that's happened to them, that will be trained in their mind for the rest of their life. How you react to the first time your kid comes to you for help because they screwed up is how they will remember you for the rest of their life, and if they should and can come to you.
That sentence is probably like the most haunting sentence for prospective parents like myself, because it's like, do I really, like, am I the guy that can like actually solve their problems, or guide them in the right way, uh so just kind of a funny question. But kind of a more meta question: how does addiction itself happen?
Ooh, well, it depends. It depends. For someone like me, I have an allergy that they haven't found what the gene is or what the exact abnormality is, but my mind actually reacts different to anything that alters it. Anything that alters my mood or my mind or the state that I'm in actually causes something called the phenomenon of craving, to where if I'm not high or I'm not being altered or I'm not in a mood difference, then I need it. I feel like I need it. I need to alter my mind. I need to do this. And people that don't have that don't understand it. You know, it's hard to understand why we can't have one drink and stop. But then there's certain drugs that, if you give a 30-day prescription of Percocet, low level Percocet, to 100 people, 100 adults, 40% of them are going to become physically addicted in 30 days. And the stats for the addicts, like the gene for what I just explained to you for me, is like 10% or less of the population. So if that's the case, that means someone that doesn't have what I have, someone that isn't necessarily a genetically born addict, can get addicted to things like cocaine, crack, opiates, heroin, fentanyl, meth, those kinds of things. You don't have to have what I have, and it can ruin your life.
That's incredible. um Again, just a curiosity, uh is, and I know you said they haven't found the specific gene, so I'm guessing they don't know if it's like a, what's the word, if it's a dominant characteristic or if it's recessive or anything like that.
Right. I don't think they found exactly what it is, because still Science is actually saying that it could be a mix of genes and environment. I think,
Interesting.
like, I believe that they're really close to finding it, though. I believe that they're really close to finding it. But the problem is that it centers in the mind. So if it's not, you know, it's something that's passed down, you know, but where is it? If it's something that is an allergy that's in our mind, it's totally different because they've actually found that it's an allergy. And when you think of an allergy, you think of taking peanuts and you get hives and your throat closes up, or those kinds of allergies. But this one makes you want more drugs. And if you don't know it, if you haven't experienced it, it's very difficult to understand how that allergy
Yeah.
is real. Like I had everything going for me in my younger years. And drugs took all of it. All of it.
Talking about that, I guess just one final curiosity. What was it specifically that made you try that first, whatever it was?
Watch the influences around your kids. I I had someone in my life at the time that was older, and I love him very, very much. He's I love him very much. And I don't the thing is his addiction doesn't understand what's happening. And I was given cocaine when I was 12, 13 years old by someone that was 21, 22 years old. And
Wow.
I literally do not think, and I've thought about it, and because I know this person very well and I love him very much, and there was no ill intent there. Because when we're suffering in addiction, when we're using things that this is what life is about, this is what solves all my problems, you know, in those instances, when someone is confused and still young themselves, they think that it is actually helping this person in a really weird
Mm.
way. There was
Yeah.
obviously no malintent with it, you know, but that's what
Hmm.
started it. Yeah, and before that,
Wow.
right before actually that year, that year that I was introduced to drugs and alcohol, I was the home run derby hitter for my baseball team at the Little League World Series.
That's amazing that something can be going so well and then quickly introduce a new factor that might take you down a different path.
Yeah.
But Adam, again, thank you for joining me on Becoming the Hero and sharing your story. Um, as before, we do have two things left to do. So, how can our audience reach out to you, support you, and see what you're up to?
Yeah, I actually have been blessed to share my story in a book that became a number one bestseller. I've been able to get it in the hands of thousands of people around the world, and I just opened up giving it away for free, the digital and audio copy. So if you don't like to read it, I'll read it to you, and I give it to you free at fromchainstosaved.com.
Excellent. And then, like I said on last episode, we need to give our audience, the adventurers, some side quests. So this time, I'll let you go first, just so I don't risk stealing the one that you would give them, and then I'll give one after you.
Every morning before you start your workday, write down the top 3 priorities for your day: one, two, and three. And then block out the exact times that you are not going to have any interruptions to complete those 3 things. And if you do this for your days and your weeks and your months, you will watch as your dreams become reality.
Excellent. And then for my side quest, adventure, I want you to think of one person in your life that you can today have a difficult conversation with and be cognizant of your role in that conversation, whether you are the listener or the instigator of the conversation. Go pull them aside, say, hey, can we talk? I would like to talk about X topic, and then start the conversation. So, adventurer, all those will be up in the show notes. Make sure you reach out to Adam on his social media. Those will also be up in the show notes. Adam, thanks again for being here and sharing your story. Any final words to our adventurers?
Yeah, life is an adventure. Life is a game. Enjoy it and become your own hero.
Excellent. All right, adventure, you heard it here. And until next time, keep adventuring.